She doesn't reject sex. She rejects energy that doesn't move her. When a woman turns away, it's not your words she's rejecting. It's the emotional vibration behind them. If you want to unlock her desire, you must understand what truly attracts her at a psychological level. And no, it's not gifts, compliments, or even respect by itself. It's not your looks, your car, or your job title. It's your ability to own your desire without needing her validation. This power changes everything. And today, I will guide you step by step through what that power looks and feels like. Pillar 1. She doesn't want sex with weak men. When a woman senses weakness in a man, something deep inside her quietly disengages. And it happens almost instantly. Not because she wants to hurt him, or because she doesn't appreciate kindness or emotional depth, but because something primal within her needs to feel the presence of a man who knows exactly who he is. Weakness in this context isn't about lacking muscles or money. It's not about being soft-spoken or emotional. It's not about being inexperienced. True weakness is the absence of inner certainty. It's the energy of a man who hesitates when he should move, who hides his intentions behind friendliness, who masks his desire with politeness because he's afraid of rejection. Weakness is when a man seeks her validation more than he seeks to honor his own truth. And women, whether they realize it consciously or not, have a sixth sense for this kind of emotional instability. They feel it before you speak. They register it in your body language, your eye contact, the tone of your voice, the way you look at them, not with certainty, but with silent hope. You can spend months texting her sweet messages. You can pick her up and pay for every dinner. You can compliment her, listen to her problems, be available when she needs support. But if your energy is laced with the fear of rejection, if your posture suggests you're afraid of losing her, if your intentions are wrapped in passivity, she will not feel the spark of desire. She may appreciate you, she may even care for you, but the part of her that needs to feel safe enough to surrender will never activate. Because despite all your gestures, your energy is asking her to lead. You're signaling, please show me the way. And that silently tells her, you don't know where you're going. That's not someone she can trust with her vulnerability. That's not someone she can be fully feminine with. And desire, for her, requires polarity. It requires the magnetic charge between a grounded masculine presence and an open, responsive feminine energy. A woman's need for strength in a man isn't about domination. It's about emotional gravity. It's about the presence of someone who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't seek approval, but holds himself with such quiet power that she naturally wants to follow his lead. This kind of man doesn't rush. He doesn't fidget. He doesn't ask, is this okay? Every time the moment gets intimate, he doesn't look at her for confirmation. He simply looks at her with calm, confident desire and lets the energy between them speak. Strength like this doesn't shout. It doesn't posture. It doesn't perform. It rests in the body of a man who knows he is enough, who carries himself with the kind of certainty that can only be born from facing his own fears and walking through them. It's not learned through tips and tricks. It's cultivated through presence, through stillness, through owning every part of yourself, including your sexual energy, without apology. When a woman feels this kind of presence, something in her softens. She feels safe, not just physically, but emotionally and energetically. Her guard begins to lower. Her mind stops racing. She doesn't feel the need to lead the conversation or control the outcome. She can relax into her own natural rhythm. And this, more than anything, is what unlocks desire, because it tells her, this man is not looking to be completed. He is already whole. He doesn't need me to make him feel worthy. He simply wants to share his energy, not take something from me. That kind of grounded, non-needy energy creates the space for a woman to want to give herself to a moment, not out of pressure, not out of expectation, but because it feels right. Because the man in front of her feels like someone she can trust, not just with her body, but with her heart. So, if you've been wondering why your kind gestures aren't translating into attraction, if you're constantly being told, you're such a great guy, but I don't feel that way, it's not because you're broken. It's not because women are cruel or shallow. It's because you're not grounded. You're not radiating the kind of inner strength that speaks to her deeper instincts. And the good news? That strength is something you can build. It starts with choosing to stop chasing and start embodying. It starts with becoming the kind of man who doesn't need her attention to feel valuable, who doesn't rely on her affection to feel like a man, who stands tall in his truth, whether she stays or walks away. That's not arrogance, that's sovereignty. And that, above all else, is what she's craving, even if she doesn't know how to ask for it. Pillar 2. Stop asking permission. When a man asks a woman for permission to express his desire, even with good intentions, what often comes across is hesitation, not strength. Whether it's a softly spoken, "Can I kiss you?" or a nervous, "Is this okay?" the subtext isn't about honoring her boundaries, it's about seeking reassurance. It's about looking for confirmation before stepping into your truth. And this, more than anything, breaks the invisible current of attraction that flows between two people. When you ask a question that signals uncertainty, you immediately shift the emotional responsibility to her. You're asking her to decide if your move is acceptable, if the energy you're bringing is welcome, if the moment should move forward. But here's what happens emotionally on her side. She senses your fear, she feels your internal doubt, and she's instantly pulled out of her feminine flow and thrust into a mental role of judgment, analysis, and control. That might sound subtle, but the effect is immediate and irreversible. What could have been a moment charged with excitement and intimacy turns into one clouded by second guessing and emotional disconnect. The reason asking for permission feels off to her isn't because she doesn't value consent. It's because true consent doesn't come through verbalized hesitation. It comes through presence, energy, and deep awareness. A man who is truly tuned into the woman he's with doesn't need to ask questions that break the moment. He reads her, he feels her, he listens with more than his ears. He understands her breathing patterns, the dilation of her pupils, the way her body moves toward his or pulls away. He doesn't operate from logic. He's connected to a primal intuition that tells him when the moment is right, not from a place of guessing, but from a place of knowing. And when that kind of man leans in, she doesn't retreat because she already feels his certainty, his integrity, and his respect woven into every movement. He isn't demanding anything. He's simply guiding the moment with clarity and grounded awareness. The idea that you must ask before you act comes from a misunderstanding of what confidence and leadership truly look like. Too many men have been taught that being polite, non-threatening, and verbally deferential is the path to intimacy. But what it often produces is confusion. It creates situations where a woman feels she has to carry both emotional and physical responsibility. She's asked to interpret your intent, manage the pace, and decide the outcome, all while trying to feel safe and desired. This mental burden doesn't inspire attraction, it creates distance. Because attraction isn't logical, it's a biological emotional response. It's ignited when a woman feels she can relax into your presence, knowing you are guiding the moment with calm clarity, not with constant questioning. You may believe that asking her permission makes you respectful, but in many moments, especially in the early stages of intimacy, it actually places pressure on her to lead. Instead of creating safety, it puts her in the spotlight and forces her to make decisions that you should be capable of making. The truth is, you're not just asking if it's okay to kiss her. You're asking if you're enough. You're asking her to take on your emotional burden. And most women don't want that responsibility. They want a man who is so deeply connected to himself that he already knows what's right, not because he's arrogant or impulsive, but because he's present still and deeply attuned. That's the kind of energy she can relax into. That's the kind of confidence that makes her skin tingle and her guard fall. This doesn't mean you ignore her signals or override her will. In fact, it means the opposite. It means you've done the work to become so emotionally intelligent, so physically aware, and so grounded in your own center that you no longer need to ask for approval every time the energy shifts. You respect her deeply. But that respect comes through action, not anxiety. It shows in how you pause when you sense hesitation. It shows in how you adjust when the moment asks for stillness. It shows in how you carry yourself as someone who leads but never forces. And because of that, she feels safe. She feels desired, not demanded. She feels chosen, not pressured. When you stop asking for permission, something powerful happens. You reclaim your role as the emotional leader of the moment. You take responsibility for your own desire and stop outsourcing it to her. You start to move from a place of embodied truth rather than fear. And when you do that, the space between you and her becomes electric. There's tension, presence, and emotional gravity. She feels drawn to you, not because you asked for her approval, but because your certainty gave her space to feel her own desire more fully. This is how chemistry is created, not through rehearsed lines or polite questions, but through the silent force of a man who knows himself deeply and expresses that knowing with care, strength, and confidence. So, if you've been waiting for a sign before making a move, stop looking outward. The sign is inside you. It's in the way your breath steadies when you're near her. It's in the way your gaze softens but never wavers. It's in the stillness you hold when everything in you wants to fill the silence with words. Trust that. Trust her ability to feel it. Trust the energy that lives between you. And if she pulls away, you don't collapse. You simply adjust. Because your self-worth was never hanging in the balance of her answer. You're not asking for permission to be a man. You already are one. Pillar 3. Female desire is silent, not logical. Female desire doesn't operate on logic. It doesn't follow a checklist of accomplishments or rational decisions. A woman can sit across from a man who checks every intellectual box. He's polite, stable, hardworking, educated, good-looking, and kind. He says all the right things. He listens well. He offers support. Yet something inside her remains still. There's no pull, no spark, no desire. And then, moments later, she can meet someone who breaks all the rules she claims to live by. He might not have the career she envisioned, he might be mysterious or blunt. But when he looks at her, something stirs. Her breath quickens, her thoughts scatter, her heart beats in places she didn't expect. That shift doesn't come from what he said. It comes from what she felt. And that feeling has no explanation, no checklist, no strategy. It's instinctive, emotional, wordless, silent. It happens in her body long before it reaches her mind. That's the nature of feminine desire. It doesn't make sense, but it doesn't have to. Many men fall into the trap of thinking that if they just say the right things, provide enough stability, show enough patience, and avoid making mistakes, she will eventually feel something for them. But attraction doesn't build through effort alone. It builds through presence. It builds through energy. The emotional body responds to something that can't be spoken. It must be sensed. You could spend years improving your conversation skills, trying to relate to her interests, memorizing lines, or rehearsing deep questions to ask on dates. But if the feeling behind your words is timid, uncertain, or driven by outcome, she will never connect to you emotionally. She may appreciate you, she may even thank you, but she will not desire you because she doesn't feel drawn into the moment. She doesn't feel your energy holding her. She doesn't feel mystery, tension, or emotional gravity. This is why so many women say things like, "I don't know why I like him. I just do." It's not because they lack self-awareness. It's because what they're responding to has no name. It lives beneath the surface. It's the way a man carries himself. The way he walks into a room and doesn't rush to take up space, yet commands attention without saying a word. It's the way he looks at her with unwavering focus, not hunger, but certainty. It's the steadiness in his body language, the calm in his breathing, the lack of anxiety in his silence. She doesn't consciously understand it, but her body does. Her emotional system lights up. Her mind may try to catch up later, trying to explain what just happened. But the moment of activation, the moment when her body said yes, didn't come from logic. It came from the language of sensation, from energetic alignment. If you're trying to win her attention by convincing her with reason, you're already losing the deeper game. You're speaking to her brain when what needs to awaken is her body. You don't need to persuade her. You need to allow her to feel. And for that to happen, you have to feel yourself first. You need to be connected to your own body, your own breath, your own grounded emotions. When a man is deeply present, fully rooted in his masculine energy, he creates a field around him, a silent charge. He doesn't need to push. He doesn't need to prove. He simply is. And that beingness speaks volumes. She notices the difference immediately. He is not performing. He is not pretending. He is not planning the next step. He is there, fully. And in that space, she feels permission to melt. Desire, for a woman, is not ignited through intellectual compatibility. It is activated through emotional polarity, through contrast, through feeling something different from what she feels in herself. If she is floating in her feminine energy, intuitive, fluid, sensitive, what creates attraction is the presence of a man who is stable, unmoved, deeply grounded. That contrast draws her in. She wants to feel that stability because it gives her the freedom to be fully herself. But if your energy mirrors hers, uncertain, reactive, anxious, there's nothing for her to lean into. No masculine presence for her to respond to. No anchor. And without that, desire cannot grow. Not because she doesn't want it, but because you're not creating the conditions where it can arise. This is why so many men who try to earn a woman's affection through logic end up confused. They do everything right, on paper. They listen, they support, they communicate. But their presence lacks emotional heat. It lacks mystery. It lacks depth. And so, while the woman may appreciate their goodness, she feels no craving for their touch, no need to be closer, no sense of being pulled into something magnetic. And when that absence continues, she pulls away, not out of cruelty, but out of emotional flatness. She may not even understand why. She just knows something was missing. She couldn't feel him. She couldn't lose herself in the moment. To truly awaken feminine desire, you must step beyond performance and into essence, beyond planning and into presence. It's not about what you say. It's about how you feel when you say it. It's about the silence between your words, the way your energy fills the space without needing to dominate it. It's about whether you're anchored in yourself or reaching for her approval. The more rooted you are in your own emotional truth, the more naturally she feels invited into that space. You don't need to convince her. You just need to be there, fully, unapologetically, and without expectation. The men who create the deepest, most lasting impact in a woman's heart are not the ones who say the perfect words. They are the ones who leave her feeling something she can't explain. And that feeling begins when you stop trying to make sense and start becoming the presence that speaks without a single word. Pillar 4, sexual energy, speaks louder than words. A man can walk into a room and say nothing, yet every woman there feels him. They may not turn their heads immediately. They may not even understand what just shifted in the atmosphere, but their bodies know. Their nervous systems detect a presence that stands out, not because it is loud or aggressive, but because it is complete. This man carries something that cannot be seen, yet it colors every step he takes, every breath he draws, every glance he offers. That something is sexual energy, unapologetically felt, but entirely contained. And that kind of energy speaks louder than anything he could ever say. It cuts through small talk, through social rituals, through clever words and forced smiles. It vibrates with truth. It tells her without language, I see you, I want you, and I do not need to chase you. Most men misunderstand what sexual energy truly is. They believe it must be expressed directly, through compliments, flirtation, or overt physical moves. Or worse, they feel ashamed of it and bury it beneath politeness and avoidance, thinking it's something dangerous or unwelcomed. This leads to two types of energy that women instinctively reject: the man who hides his desire out of fear, and the man who leaks his desire because he hasn't learned how to hold it. The first becomes invisible, the second becomes uncomfortable. Both fail to generate attraction, not because they are bad men, but because their energy is either blocked or chaotic. Neither can be trusted. One lacks depth, the other lacks safety. And women can sense both within seconds. A man who has mastered his sexual energy, who carries it with dignity, with calm, with stillness, is someone a woman cannot ignore. He does not speak it into existence. He lives it. He doesn't perform. He radiates. He doesn't hover or push. He occupies his space fully, like he belongs there. And when he desires a woman, he doesn't rush to act. He doesn't try to impress her or force a response. He simply allows the desire to be felt, first within himself, then shared with her through presence alone. His eyes don't beg, they hold. His voice doesn't ask, it resonates. His body doesn't fidget, it grounds. And when she's near him, she feels both excited and calm, drawn in, yet safe. That is the magic of contained sexual energy. It speaks directly to her primal intelligence. It bypasses her logical mind and lands in her body with clarity. It tells her, this man is not pretending. He's not performing. He's not hiding his desire, but he's not desperate for it to be fulfilled either. He's simply being who he is. Contained sexual energy is like fire in a hearth. It warms the space without burning it down. It draws people closer without making them feel threatened. It's power held in stillness. And that stillness makes a woman lean in. Not because you reached for her, but because she wants to feel more of what you're radiating. There's something deeply attractive about a man who is turned on by life, not just by her body, but by his purpose, by his breath, by his ability to sit with his own heat without needing to cool it down with instant gratification. This man doesn't need to release his energy to feel complete. He channels it, he carries it. And in doing so, he becomes magnetic. When a woman feels this kind of energy, she responds even if she doesn't consciously know why. Her heart races, her breath shallows, her awareness sharpens. She becomes more aware of her body, more attuned to her own desire. Not because you touched her, not because you said the right thing, but because your presence awakened something in her that she hadn't felt in a long time. An invitation to feel more, to want more, to open. You see, sexual energy isn't just about sex. It's about aliveness. It's about the current that flows through your voice when you speak your truth, the grounding in your spine when you stand still, the unwavering gaze you hold, not to dominate, but to connect. If you have ever felt rejected by a woman, even when you were doing everything right, this is the piece you were missing. You may have said all the right things. You may have respected her space. You may have been kind and thoughtful and attentive. But if your body was tense with repressed desire, or leaking with uncontained hunger, she felt that, and it pushed her away. Women don't reject desire. They reject insecure desire. They reject the energy of a man who either fears his own hunger or is enslaved by it. What they crave is the energy of a man who is turned on by life, who is lit from within, and who doesn't need to do anything about it. He simply is. That's what safety feels like. That's what attraction feels like. That's what presence feels like. To become that man, you don't need to chase anyone. You don't need to say the perfect words. You don't need to flirt harder or try more. You need to connect to your own body. You need to feel your desire fully without shame. And then you need to learn to hold it, like a fire you tend, not a fire you throw. When you can do that, you will notice women responding in ways you never expected. They will linger. They will soften. They will want to be near you, not because you said anything, but because they feel something. And that something speaks louder than any words ever could. Pillar 5, the man who doesn't react. Rejection is one of the most emotionally destabilizing experiences for most men. Not because rejection itself is devastating, but because of what it symbolizes internally. For many, it reflects back a question they've been unconsciously asking for years. Am I enough? And when the answer appears to be no, even subtly or indirectly, their entire emotional foundation begins to shake. The truth is, most men are not rejected because of who they are. They're rejected because of how they respond to not being chosen. And when that response is panic, self-doubt, withdrawal, apology, or worse, aggression, the rejection is no longer about chemistry. It becomes a rejection of insecurity. But there is a kind of man who stands apart. A man who, when faced with resistance, stays centered. He doesn't argue. He doesn't explain. He doesn't shrink or try to convince her otherwise. He simply holds his ground, not in a defensive way, but in a way that says, your opinion doesn't determine my worth. This man, the one who doesn't react, is rare, and his energy is unforgettable. When a woman expresses hesitation or even denies a man's advance, she is not always saying, I'm not interested. Often, consciously or not, she is observing how the man will respond to pressure. Will he collapse? Will he become needy? Will he try harder to win her approval? Or will he hold his shape, stay grounded, stay calm, and honor her response without internalizing it as a personal failure? Women instinctively test men not because they're trying to manipulate or reject them, but because they want to feel the man's center. They want to know if the confidence he carries is real or just surface-level bravado. A man who reacts emotionally to every change in mood, Every fluctuation in affection, or every pause in communication, reveals that his sense of value is externally constructed, that he is strong only when the world is validating him, that he is calm only when she is smiling. But the man who doesn't react, that's the man whose presence invites trust, because he's showing her that he is whole, with or without her agreement. There is something profoundly attractive about emotional stillness, not coldness, not apathy, but that warm, unshakable calm that says, I know who I am, I know what I offer, and I do not need you to understand me, choose me, or validate me in order for me to keep being me. This kind of man carries no emotional debt. He doesn't try to force closure. He doesn't chase clarity. If a woman ghosts him, he doesn't explode with frustration or spiral into self-blame. He simply continues his life with the same integrity he had before she left. If she cancels a plan, he doesn't beg for explanations. He simply notes the shift and makes space for someone who respects his time. If she tests his emotional boundaries by withdrawing affection, giving mixed signals, or creating drama, he doesn't engage in emotional ping pong. He stays grounded, not because he doesn't care, but because he knows the difference between love and chaos, between attention and connection, between validation and value. When a woman interacts with this type of man, she feels something different, something rare. She feels the presence of someone who is emotionally safe, someone who won't lose himself in her moods, someone who won't turn love into a performance. This gives her space to relax, to trust, to express, and ultimately, to desire. Because true feminine attraction isn't built in perfectly scripted moments. It's built in how you carry yourself through uncertainty, how you hold your posture when things don't go your way, how you respond when she pulls away, when she challenges your confidence, when she seems unsure. That's when she sees who you are. That's when she decides if your confidence is something she can lean into, or just a mask that falls the moment things get hard. Men often mistake non-reactiveness for emotional detachment, but that's not what this is about. Emotional detachment is avoidance. It's the man who pretends not to care because he's afraid to feel. But true non-reactiveness is different. It's full ownership of your emotional world. It's knowing that her rejection doesn't shrink your masculinity, that her interest doesn't inflate your ego, that you are responsible for your own state, and you don't hand that power to anyone else, not even someone you deeply desire. That level of sovereignty is magnetic. It tells her, I see you, I want you, but I don't need you to complete me. I am already whole. In relationships, in dating, in any emotional interaction, the most attractive man is the one who doesn't fold under pressure, who can stay calm in chaos, who can hear no and still remain open, warm, and grounded. That energy builds trust. That energy builds polarity. That energy allows a woman to feel safe enough to explore her own vulnerability, because she knows you won't crumble if things don't go your way. You become a container. You become the space in which she can unfold. And in that space, desire is born, not out of fear, not out of control, but out of true emotional polarity. So, if you want to become more desirable, not for a quick win, but for deep, lasting connection, learn to hold your center. Train your nervous system to stay calm under emotional weight. Feel the trigger and pause. Breathe. Own your reaction without unleashing it. Speak when it's true, not when it's defensive. This is the work of the modern masculine. This is the edge that separates men who chase from men who choose. And the man who chooses, who doesn't react out of lack, but responds from presence. That's the man she cannot forget. Pillar 6. Let her suggest it first. When a woman feels a strong emotional and energetic connection to a man, something almost imperceptible begins to shift inside her. Her defenses relax, her internal dialogue quiets, and her body naturally, instinctively, starts to lean in, both literally and emotionally. She might not consciously decide to pursue or initiate, but she begins to express interest in subtle, deeply feminine ways. She'll find reasons to be near you. Her laughter becomes fuller and freer around you. She initiates physical contact in casual but intentional gestures. A touch on the arm, a playful nudge, a glance that lingers a moment longer than usual. Her messages come quicker, her tone softens. She starts to mirror your energy, but with a pull, an invitation. These aren't random moments, these are green lights. They're signals from her subconscious saying, I feel safe, I feel intrigued, I want more. But those signals only appear in the presence of a very specific kind of energy, masculine stillness. The more deeply grounded and non reactive you are, the more space she feels to express herself. The moment you start chasing, those signals dry up. The moment you begin anticipating, overanalyzing, or pushing, the space becomes claustrophobic. She feels the need to protect her emotional flow. But when you rest in your own presence, when you're not constantly trying to get her to do anything, but simply enjoying the energy between you, she can open, she can flow, she can rise to meet you in the dynamic without feeling forced or obligated. It's in this space that a woman often becomes the initiator of the next step, not because she's being dominant or aggressive, but because she's been drawn into the gravity of your stillness. What most men don't realize is that true feminine energy is reactive by nature. It responds, it reflects, it feels deeply and intuitively. But it cannot move toward you if you're the one constantly closing the space with questions, pressure, or expectations. Every time you send another text asking what she's doing, every time you over-explain your feelings, every time you try to get her to validate your emotional state, you subtly take that freedom away from her. It's like standing in front of a flower that's just starting to bloom and tugging at the petals. You don't help it open faster. You damage the process entirely. But if you sit, patiently present, admiring the quiet beauty of its unfolding, it continues to open, on its own, naturally, irresistibly. Letting her suggest the next step doesn't mean being passive or cold. It means creating such a safe, deeply masculine container that she feels pulled into the space you're holding. It means expressing your interest with clarity, but not with anxiety. It means being intentional, but never attached to the outcome. She senses your desire not through your words alone, but through the way you hold your gaze, the steadiness of your presence, the warmth of your silence. And when that energy is real, when you are genuinely at peace with whether she comes closer or not, she can't help but move toward you. This is why some of the most emotionally captivating experiences in a woman's life begin with her asking the question. She'll suggest meeting again. She'll offer to drive to you. She'll start sharing pieces of her heart. And she'll do this not because you persuaded her, but because you gave her the emotional space to initiate. This is the magic of polarity. Masculine energy holds, grounds, witnesses. Feminine energy flows, opens, responds. And when the polarity is strong, the woman naturally gravitates toward the man, not as a role reversal, but as a sign of energetic resonance. She wants to be part of that presence. She wants to explore what you're not asking for, but silently embodying. You might be surprised to find her texting you first, or planning the date you assumed you'd need to coordinate, or touching your leg during a quiet moment with no prompt at all. These gestures aren't manipulations, they're invitations. They're her way of saying, I feel this, I want this, but only because you're not pushing me toward it. That's the paradox of deep attraction. The more space you give her to come toward you, the more deeply she wants to. She doesn't want to be the one constantly pursued, but she also doesn't want to feel like she's being emotionally cornered. What she truly wants is to move into a space that already feels strong, warm, and open, because in that space, her feminine nature can shine. So, if you've ever felt that women are distant, disinterested, or emotionally unavailable, it's not because they don't desire connection. It's often because they haven't felt the kind of presence that gives them permission to invite closeness. You don't have to beg. You don't have to strategize. You simply have to be still, strong, and attuned. Be the flame that doesn't chase the moth. Be the mountain that doesn't move when the wind changes. When you carry yourself like that, she doesn't just notice you, she feels you. And once she feels you, she will be the one who leans in, asks the questions, makes the move. Not because you pushed her to, but because she wanted to. The nice guy black hole. One of the most painful patterns for men is putting in time, energy, and kindness, only to be told, I don't feel that way about you. You do everything you've been taught is right. You show up, you're generous, you avoid being too forward. She laughs, she smiles, maybe even touches your arm. But when it's time for connection to deepen, she pulls away. It hurts because it feels like betrayal, but it isn't. It's misalignment. What you're offering is comfort, not chemistry. Women don't want to be led by a man who waits for their cues. They want to feel the fire of leadership, the thrill of presence, and the electricity of intention. Being kind isn't a flaw, but kindness without masculine direction becomes invisible. She respects you, but doesn't feel you. She appreciates your time, but doesn't crave your touch. She says, "You're such a good guy," but you vanish from her thoughts the moment she walks away. The everything was perfect, then she ghosted. You spent hours with her. Conversation flowed. There was laughter, deep eye contact. It all felt real. But a few days later, silence. The texts dry up. Plans get vague. Eventually, she's gone. You sit there replaying every moment, convinced you missed something. But what happened is simple. You weren't present in your power. You talked well, you listened well, but your energy lacked claim. You didn't express your intent. You didn't let her feel your grounded desire. You entertained her mind, but left her body unstirred. And in that void, someone else who carries more certainty walks in. He doesn't talk as much. He doesn't plan perfect dates. But when she's near him, she feels something. It's not what you said. It's what you didn't become. This happens to thousands of men every single day. And it can stop with one shift. Learning to radiate desire without needing a result. What masculine presence looks like. Masculine presence isn't a technique. It's not a look you wear or a line you drop. It's the way your eyes don't dart around the room when she speaks. It's the slow, intentional pace of your movements. It's how you pause before you answer, because you're not in a rush to impress. It's the stillness of a man who doesn't fear silence. Women respond deeply to presence because it calms their nervous system. They feel safe enough to soften. They feel held, not with hands, but with the feeling you bring into the room. Masculine presence says, "I'm right here. I'm not escaping. I'm not performing. And I'm not chasing." It's unspoken, but when you embody it, she feels it instantly and remembers it long after you're gone. If you felt something deep in your chest during this video, if even one line lit a fire inside you, don't just move on. Support this channel, subscribe, share this message. Help us bring these insights to the thousands of women and men who need them but don't know where to look. By supporting this channel, you're helping make this truth accessible. You're helping shift lives, and you're helping build a world where real connection replaces confusion. Comment "unstoppable" if you made it to the end. That tells me you're serious, and I want to serve men like you. We're just getting started. You've just scratched the surface. Let's keep building. Let's change your life and every woman's life who gets to meet the real you.